Hello everyone! Welcome to the Tricentis MOOC of the day, which is a wonderful day in Vienna. We will have today the topic about test case design. Different approaches for creating test case designs, which is a good start for every testing project. Our hosts, your hosts today will be Søren Skupien, which is an expert in the field here at Tricentis and who does projects at the customer on a regular basis. Welcome. Very nice to have you today with us.
Hi, Jonathan. Hi, guys.
He will be showcasing on today's topic, and as well myself, Jonathan Laun, training consultant here at Tricentis. Okay, before we will start with the topic, some housekeeping rules. I know many of you are here on a regular basis, but as we have always new people with us at these sessions, we will mention these housekeeping rules briefly. First, every one of you is muted. This is because hundreds of you are out there at the moment, and as we can't talk all at the same time, you're muted. As well, you have some apps at the bottom of the screen that can be toggled on and off, which are Twitter. Then you have a share app. Then you have the Q&A, where you can ask your questions during these sessions, and you have the media player. Please don't turn off, especially the media player, because otherwise you couldn't see anything. Another thing, another helpful hint, so to say, is the F5 key to reload the page, especially when you have audio problems. We will have a question and answer session at the end, but you can also ask your questions during this session in the question and answer box. Please keep your questions on topic, as we have many questions, and we will prefer the questions that are on topic, and we will unfortunately not able to answer all of your questions. So please keep your questions on topic. The session will be recorded and will be available through our website later this week. Okay, the basic structure of this session will be the concepts, to give you a theoretical background. Then Søren will do demonstration in our beloved Tosca, and then we will have a discussion afterwards in the question and answer session. So this is the basic structure, but enough talking of me, and now I will hand over to Søren, who will do the interesting part. Søren, please go on.
Thanks, Jonathan, for the kind introduction. And yeah, let's start right away with our demonstration part. First of all, let's start with the conceptions. I've brought you today, the topic is test case design, and I want to address in today's session different perspectives or different approaches you can go within Tosca with test case design. It totally depends on the starting point of your project. And so the topics I've brought for today is first the requirement-based approach, which is kind of the waterfall style. Like first of your project, you will start with a requirement workshop. You have a requirement structure, and then you move on with the next related topic of your project, like drafting test cases. A second approach, or a second way you can go in Tosca, is like creating test case design from already existing modules. And a third approach I want to address for today is test case design starting from the test case section. Let's go first with a very general introduction about test management within Tosca. In my projects, I show this cycle nearly all the time on a regular basis when I'm opening a workshop or something like this, or when I address new topics to the client, to the customer. I guess you have seen this cycle. This is my kind of my walkthrough with Tosca and how I address this as best practice at projects. So first of all, in my project, I have to define what I want to test. I usually start with a risk-based prioritization of requirements. So on ideal, I do have a workshop with a client. We set up some requirements, which is the scope of the workshop phase or the whole project. It totally depends on how deep the customer wants to go. And after defining requirements, we can go with the test case design description, which you can do on a logical perspective in Tosca in the test case design section, which is the red section. After defining my test cases on logical level, I address the question, how would the client want to test? And here we need the module section if the client wants to go with automated test cases. And of course, there's the technical specification, like the blue section in Tosca, the test cases section, where I have the second layer, like the technical information of my test cases, or I can only go with manual test cases, but I need this section to complete the cycle. So, and the last question, which we don't want to toggle today, is the execution list section, where I organize all my testing or my test execution, or where I can plan also exploratory testing sessions. So, and last but not least, to complete this cycle, we do have the reporting section, where I can manage my project reports, which I can use in nearly every section of Tosca. So this was the cycle view. Another view regarding the different sections in Tosca I want to address with this slide. Like I mentioned, the typical starting point in a project would be the requirements section. Like I have to define what I want to test, what is the system under test, and of course there are so many different projects and different strategies on moving in the test process. Whether I want to go with a waterfall, a classical approach in testing, or I go with more agile. And moving from section to section, I'm creating, let's say, different artifacts. When starting at the requirement, I can then choose, do I want to have methodological test case creation, or do I want to have exploratory testing sessions? Again, the best practice from my side would be to go with the test case design section. I can meet the related SMEs for specific functionalities, but also a proper way of creating test cases would be the exploratory testing functionality of Tosca and writing test charters and let the testers use their experiences to create test cases and to familiarize themselves with the system under test. After this second step, like test case design or exploratory testing, I will have different artifacts which I can then bring to the third section, the blue section Tosca, where I decide do I want to go with automated test cases or manual test cases. I have to think about my test data management, and the last but not least step is like test execution, but which is not relevant for our session. I just want to address that you can go to test case design from different perspectives, like to show here on this slide. The first topic I want to address will be the requirement-based approach. I moved to test case design. When I have created a test charter on exploratory testing and I have manual test cases created, there would be the need for some test case refinement, since this exploratory testing sessions, they produce different walkthroughs through the application. If I have, e.g., some manual test cases created, I can also bring them into test case design for a better overview, to compare different scenarios, and so on. In other projects, like when a client is deciding to switch from one test tool to another, there might be already some test cases in the portfolio which you also want to bring to test case design. So would be the third way I want to address today. Like, you have existing test cases, manual or automated, doesn't matter. They can be brought to test case design too, to again have to use this section to again reflect on different combinatorics, different scenarios, to compare test cases to each other. And the third way, which is not reflected on this slide, you can also go or use test case design where the module section is your starting point. So it's basically a step between the test case section and the test case design section. So, to have a very brief and short overview of test methodology, as I want to introduce it as best practice and as a guide for you outside, to have some standards which you can address in your projects, is like for the test case design section, the basic definition of a test sheet would be to collect similar test cases in a single container. And usually my department or the whole PSO department of Tricentis is addressing a standard test sheet structure where you have some standard attributes inside called administration, precondition, process, verification. And as an explanation, to manage additional data like project data can be difficult in test case design section. That's why we go with an administration attribute where you can put in project related information. So the standard flow of writing a test case from my side, how I want to address it, is you set a precondition, can be functional or technical precondition for the test scenario you want to create. You have an attribute for the process, like what are the actual input parameters into your system under test, and then of course you have a verification. What are the output parameters of the explicit test case or test scenario? When we later on come into test case design, you will see different columns, and you will see an attribute structure. So the attribute structure would be your flow through the application or through the functionality, and every column you see then on the right side will represent one test case. And also from Tricentis side, we addressing the linear expansion, which includes a straight-through instance. and per definition, a straight-through would be the most basic sequence of workflow steps, like what is the most common scenario through this particular functionality. And to quickly introduce linear expansion, who haven't heard of it, it's a combinatorial method where you have as a starting point a straight-through instance, and every next instance is covering one topic, because we are creating straight-through mutants to generate this test case variations, where every test case is different in exactly one instance. Would be the ideal process. So enough of the talk, and to jump into my my examples I have prepared for you today, to give just a quick introduction on the topics I mentioned. Let's switch to Tosca. This one. So you see here my workspace, which is just called MOOC session. I have set up some requirements. We have a test case design section, we have a module section, and a test case section. So when I'm at a client, as a methodologist, I first ask the client on the actual project requirements. If there are none, I will ask if we can create one, or if there is any documentation which we can bring to Tosca. What I have brought for you today is the example of an online store, and guess there was already an requirement workshop, and the related SMEs or technical architects, whoever was responsible for the requirements, they have set up this structure. For this online store, there's a customer management functionality, and there's some kind of order management functionality which we can have a look at. So for the customer management, there's a login and a register, and they have set up for the order management 3 requirements, like functionality of selecting a product, there's a payment process, and there's also some kind of discount calculation. So that as an introduction into the requirement structure. I have used the description column to just create the relation which of the requirements I want to face with what kind of topic. So I would like to start, as you remember the agenda, test case design from the specification or from the requirement would be, we will cover the requirement register. At the next topic, we do have the requirement payment process, where I want to address the test case design from module section. And of course, there is this third topic, the test case design from test cases, where we later on toggle the requirement discount calculation. Okay. For this example, I have included the light version of risk-based testing. So I have said for this example, order management is twice as risky as the customer management. Just for your information, that you don't wonder about different results later on. So just to show you and to let you know, you can reflect on the different sections, test case design, test cases and execution, directly in the requirement section. And therefore I would like to introduce a column for requirements, the test case design coverage. Also, you can reflect on coverage specified, and also you can reflect on execution state. So, how to read this? As you can see, test case design coverage for the particular requirement login is at 100%. So anybody in the project would have already created some test cases and have linked them to this particular requirement. So we don't want to go with test case design for the login because it's already taken care of. We want to start with the register. And just to have a quick overview, the requirement select product is not covered with test case design yet. The payment process is not covered with test case design yet, but there are some test cases linked already from the blue section to discount calculation, which will later on will be our example of bringing test cases from the blue section to the red section. So let's start with the first requirement to toggle the register process. I have set up the requirement structure as you can see it here. So the full structure as a project structure and a folder structure for the next sections. And I will find my customer management folder here with the two folders for artifacts for the login and the register. So we want to go with the test case design for the register process, and therefore I will use my test sheet template. So I will move it to this folder, and I would like to reflect the attribute structure I have mentioned before during the conceptual stuff. This is the usual template I work with when being at a client side. I do have my administration, I do have my precondition attribute, the process attribute, and the verification attribute. And as you can see, we have three different colors. This would be, you can check it at the properties, this would be an attribute type logical, and business relevant, no. The precondition and the process, let's check. They have no sub-attributes. They are now called physical, with attribute type physical, but they are toggled with business relevance, yes. Okay. And the verification, just to show you, has a business relevant result. That's why we have three different colors. Okay. Yeah. Starting from the requirement register, I would need now to now have some information on how is the register process ongoing, what are business relevant attributes for this register process. So I would need some information from the client or from the related department in the project. Let's say we are pretending to have a workshop, but it could also be some document providing us with information. And let's keep it simple for the test case design introduction. Let's say I got some information from related SMEs or also from the engineering. The register process, firstly name our test sheet, the register process. There is a name attribute. Like for the register, I have to enter my name, I have to enter my email, I have to enter a password, and there must be, when we reflect a specific register screen, there must be also password to like repeat it. Okay, I put this into brackets. So I have defined a specific structure for the register process. What we want to verify, I will ask the client is maybe there's at the end of the test case or the scenario a message like I have to ask the client. Let's go with we have here plain attributes with no instances under it. I want to keep it very logical during this session. Like for the email address, there is the valid format. and there is maybe an invalid format. Password, I will choose let's say valid password, and also some restriction on using different, maybe there's a limit in the password length or something like this. So I will again go just with for our first example with a logical explanation. There will be some invalid passwords or invalid password lengths. Let's go with this valid password lengths just to reflect on this issue. And for the last attribute, the password, where you have to repeat it, let's say there are also two scenarios, like correctly, correctly repeated and incorrectly repeated. Okay, let's say the name is has to be defined later on, and we want to create different combinations out of these instances. Like we can calculate right now. We do have 3 attributes with 2 instances. Let's check. Tosca is helping you by with generating instances, and it's offering different combinatorial methods. I go with the first one, all combinations, and we have here 8 combinations created, so 8 test scenarios. That's what I meant during the conceptual introduction. When you create test cases, I would suggest and recommend to first go with the structure of the specific flow of the functionality. And here the columns you see, they represent different scenarios using different input parameters. And as you can see, Tosca, for generating instances from the test sheet level, has considered only the business relevant attributes for using combinations. So all combinations is creating all combinations. If the number of attributes and also the number of instances increases, you will have certain limits on displaying this combinatorics within one test sheet. So the limit must be, I guess, in test case design, it's 1,000 instances Tosca can calculate here and display. It will display cannot display more than 1,000. So if we think of our testing resources and also on maintenance on test cases and stuff like this, I have to ask, do we really need all combinations, or can we go with a smaller amount of test cases for our test coverage of the specific requirement? So I again will delete it, and let's go with generate instances orthogonal. Oh, looks great. We have only two combinations possible, generated. I'm sorry, but we would need to first of all we would need to reflect on what is the process here. Is it possible to go with this input parameter in a single test case? And sometimes with the orthogonal combinatorial method, you perform multiple verifications, or you want to put multiple verifications in a single test case, and later on it might be difficult to find errors having such kind of test cases. So just to check, I want to go with the linear expansion method for our example, and Tosca is telling me I'm not able to perform, or Tosca is not able to perform linear expansion since the process structure and the instances we have set up are not containing straight-through instances for email, password, and also the password repeated. So the precondition for performing linear expansion would be having the instances toggled with a specific character. You can see it in the menu ribbon. Let's say our straight-through instance for the email is a valid email address, and I can also assign, as you have seen it maybe, there are 3 different characters to assign: a straight-through instance, valid instance, or invalid instances with this cross. So let's say there's also a valid password length, which we want to define on logical level, and this instance would be our straight-through instance, and the same with the password repeated. The invalid password length would be invalid instance, and password repeated also incorrectly repeated. So again, let's try linear expansion. I choose from the context menu, generate instances, linear expansion, and looks very nice. We have 4 instances, 1 straight-through instance. As I mentioned, this should be the most, this is a happy path where we enter a valid email format, a valid password, and we correctly repeat this password. What we are missing is verification, but first of all, let's check what has Tosca done with by performing this combinatorial method linear expansion. As I mentioned, a straight-through was created, and then Tosca has created mutants of this straight-through by varying it in 1 instance. So the next test case has an invalid format for the email, and it should run into an error. Let's say there's just an error message. Oh, I'm sorry. Error. The next invalid scenario, as you can see it here at the instance level on the top level, it's using an invalid password, and it should also run into an error. And the third scenario, where you not repeat the password correctly, should also run into an error. Okay, and we have 1 success message. So that would be the linear expansion approach on a very simple example. I just want to go step by step through these different attributes we have here. As I mentioned, we have an administration attribute, and as I mentioned, there are limit ways of putting project-related information into test case design. So I can put them directly into a test sheet and directly assign it to 1 test case to have this information stored. Let's say in half a year you have a revision and you need a responsible person for who did this test case design, because there are some questions. So I can assign a test case designer, just as an example, will be me. The SME for this register process, let's say it was Jonathan. I will just put his name here. And for every test case, I can assign a test type. Let's see what we got here. I can assign a smoke, regression, or runtime test. Okay, the happy path would be our smoke test, and let's say the rest is regression, has regression potential. Just on how to deal with the administration. So for the register process, there would be no precondition, but we have assigned a process where we're entering a name. It can be any name. Let's say there are no technical limits. Can be we need one for testing purposes, so we could assign some name for each test case, that it's clear here. We have created email, password, and password repeated attribute, and we have separated the verification. So from a logical perspective, this is how a test case design at the starting point could look like. Okay, because we have limited time for today, let's switch to the next sections. But to reflect on the requirements for the register process, we have created a test case design. And of course, after creating the test case design, we can link the test cases we have created to the related requirement. So that's it. Let's come to the next topic. For the payment process, let's guess we have predefined modules already provided by the module engineers for a huge project, and the test analyst or the test case designer can also use these modules to create test cases. It's just a specific workflow in Tosca to follow, nothing difficult, a drag and drop process. But let's say we now want to go with the order process payment process. I will go with my standard test sheet, put it into my related folder for test case design, the payment process. I rename the test sheet into payment process. Double click on it, and as you see, it's empty. But when I go into my module section, I do have the information. There are predefined modules ready to use it for automation, and there is one, the payment process, containing different module attributes and also containing specific value ranges predefined while the module was scanned, let's say. I can use this module to create an attribute structure containing already the instances for the related attributes when they have a value range assigned. That's it, just a drag and drop option, and I have it in my test case design. Okay, I have let's say we don't need this attribute. I will just move all of the attributes one level up, and we have, e.g. for the payment process, instances assigned. As a methodologist or test case designer, I will then run through the SMEs are responsible for the payment process in general. I would ask them for what is the most common instance for the payment method. Maybe they say it's a credit card, and usually people go with a Visa card. I will close this. I have to assign straight through also for the expiration date month. Let's say, I don't know, let's go with June, and we have expiration date year. Let's go with 2019. Otherwise, linear expansion would not work. And also for the back and continue button, we do have the continue button as straight through and the click button as straight through. So, and again, in a very, very easy and fast way, I can generate instances with my linear expansion at the starting point of test case design. But as things in this test case design become a bit more complex, as we had it in the register process, we see here Tosca is creating a straight through and then varying it in the next instance for the other test cases in the columns. As you can see here, the payment method direct debit is also going with Visa. A direct debit is not possible to go with Visa, so I would need to assign instance manually. Let's say a credit card type is not applicable for this scenario. So, and that's why linear expansion does not know dependencies between your business attributes and the instances. So linear expansion can be a good starting point on creating test cases and thinking about different scenarios. But of course, Tosca is just it's a tool for helping, and it's supporting your test case creation process. But you have to do sometimes something also manually. So now the first 4 test cases would be in the correct order. Like straight through is working with credit card Visa, and we have an expiration date year assigned. When I check this process again, there is I'm not pressing the back and continue button at the same time. To continue the payment process, I would simply click the click button. You can also remove instances for every test cases with just Control delete, and we could assign again some kind of an NA, that we won't press NA in this scenario, but we want to continue. And just to make it a bit more complete, after the payment process and pressing continue, let's say there's a second screen number 2 appears, and maybe some scenarios won't work. Maybe we're expecting a message, I don't know, some text. So I would, for my test case design, I got a draft of 22 instances. I would need to check if all the scenarios created here are valid. And I would need to think about additional scenarios, or some projects, they have a first session for test case design where they initially create this structure, and the related SMEs, they think in the later phase about different scenarios. Then you might have a review session where test case designer and SME meet again, and you can finalize or do a progress on this test sheet. Okay, we have 8 minutes left. I will switch to the next section or the next topic. Before we switch to the next section, we will link our graded test cases just to track progress of our session. We will link this test case design to the related requirement, because we have dealt with it and we are finished. Jonathan said we are fine. We link this test sheet to the requirements. We close this for now. And now the last topic I want to address today is, you have a specific requirement and some test cases are already assigned to it. Let's jump to the test case and let's check. We have the discount calculation, and somebody has already created 3 test cases. I would need to expand all test cases to see what's happening here. There's a login with the username. We have a password here assigned, and we have a process for discount calculation where we choose a payment method and amount is entered, and then there's verification, no discount. Okay, let's see what the other 2 test cases are up to. Okay, there is again a login, a payment method credit card, but a different amount, and then there's a discount. Interesting. And what's the third one? Again a login, a payment method credit card, amount 3,000, maybe euro, maybe US dollar. I don't know. And then there's a verification of a 25% discount and a final bill amount. Okay, interesting. As you have seen maybe, it's difficult to compare test cases in the blue section. So I would need to have an explicit test case name. It's not the case here. And I would need to open, if I would have more than 3, I would have the need to scroll down, and I'm not happy with this overview. And that's the third topic I want to address also within test case design to make it a bit more explicit. Test case design is helping you reflecting on different combinatorics, and it's helping you to compare different test cases. And of course, there is the method of bringing these test cases, not all at once, but a single, into test case design. I would need to create a new test sheet. I will create a copy of my template, put it into account discount calculation. We have it here. And it's my template, it's empty. I will rename it. Let's say discount calculation. And I do have my test case here. Oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't have to create a new test sheet. I simply can drag and drop one of the test cases here, bring it to the folder, just drop it, and Tosca has automatically created a test sheet, including the attributes which contain the manual test case. We don't have the standard structure in the first place, but from the manual test case, it has automatically created a template, and it has also automatically created the references. So if I now want to rework my test case design, let's have a look here. I might want to address the standard structure for my attribute structure. Let's go with a precondition. Let's go with what is process, and let's go what is verification. And of course I'm missing my administration. Just very quickly, this would be the order, and then I can assign the related attributes like username and password. To precondition, I can say the payment method is amount, and amount is the process, and the discount calculation is this verification attribute. So I have now brought my structure of the test case, the flow, into test case design, but I'm still missing the different values from this test case. Calculation 2, where we had the amount 200 and the amount 300. So I would need to ask the SMEs who has created these test cases and what was the logic behind the discount calculation. To make it very quickly, because we run out of time, unfortunately, let's say the related SME has provided you with some documentation on the discount calculation and has given you this draft, which is explaining what the test cases should reflect on. Like we have a line graph displaying the different bill amount, and there are different intervals like from 0 to 100, from 100 to 2000, and 1000 greater than 1000. And there's a logic or a rule applied for these different intervals, like no discount on amounts smaller than 100 and 10% discounts for bill amount between 100 to 1000, and 25% discounts for bill amount greater than 1,000. And a small note, all discounts apply only if method of payment is credit card. So, back to test case design. I would remove these test cases or put it into our archive because we won't need it here anymore. But I would like to extend test case design, and I'm doing it only by adding instances here, like to reflect on a different instance for the payment method, and let's say we are putting different intervals into test case design to reflect on logical level on our payment amount. So from 0 to 100, there is no discount. Let's say it's a straight through, and then we have an interval from 101 to 1,000, and then we have all greater than 1,001, greater than 1,000. So I have one straight through instance generated here, and of course I could dig much deeper with the intervals for the amount and with the boundary analyzers and stuff like this. Tosca is also helping me once I have set up one instances for attributes and I have a straight through already. It's helping me on complete instances. And in my case, I want to go with a linear expansion. He's filling up my my test sheet with new columns, and I see 3 additional test cases: one for payment method PayPal, which should be invalid, no discount. By the way, we don't use characters for verification instances, and we can say the 10% discount for this test case, and there's a 25% discount for this test case. And once I have adjusted my test case design, I just go to my template, or to my template instance folder. I reinstantiate it, and it's telling me I have not set up the links accordingly because I have added additional attributes. I would need to check here. I will do it manually again. I assign my attributes to the value fields, payment method, amount. I will again check my template. No errors found, and I can easily reinstantiate my instance in the template instance folder. The name is not done properly, but as first draft, you can now see I have my test case design here, and I can reflect on different combinations, and I can make these combinations better visible than have it only in the blue section. I can add instances, I can add attributes very easily in test case design, so less maintenance effort, and I can easily reproduce these test cases in the blue section by reinstantiating and using the test case template concept. Well, this was a very quick and fast overview of different perspectives using test case design with Tricentis test suite. The only thing, Jonathan is already looking at me because I'm talking too much. I would just like to link this template instance folder to the requirements, and then having these test cases assigned here, I will check with Jonathan. We have done the register process, 100% test case design. We have done the payment process, and we have also toggled the requirement discount calculation. Work state complete for today. Just reflect on the requirements, and yeah, I have to quit. Unfortunately, I have to quit now because we're running out of time. I would like to invite you all to participate into for the Q&A session. And yeah, thanks. If you have any questions, let me know. Contact details are already provided. And let's start the chat.
Okay, thank you very much, Søren. That was a wonderful presentation. It's always good to see that also with consultants, not everything is going so smoothly. I mean, yeah, we learned a lot, I think, today. Even me, when I look at experts' work from the fields, there is always something new to learn. And yeah, also to see a failure fixed is a good thing. Well, thank you very much again, Søren, for the nice presentation. And now we will switch to the Q&A part. All right, we have lots of questions from you guys. So we'll go through them one by one. Still, we have time a little bit. First question, requirement coverage in my project shows only 10% when I have one test case required. How does this column works, Søren?
Okay. Maybe for these purposes, let's switch to the requirement structure I have provided for the example. By requirement coverage, what I would first of all need to ask, what requirement coverage do you mean? But I guess you mean the coverage specified, where in some cases you have assigned some test case design, and it's showing you just 20% in the coverage specified. Or you might mean we have here one test case. I will go with one of these. It's now telling me here 50%. In general, the coverage specified reflects on not on the amount of test cases linked, but what work state does the test cases have. In our case, discount calculation number 3, it has a specific work state assigned. It was in work. When I set it to planned, I get this 20%. When I have this particular test case with a work state in work, then it will jump to 50%, and when it's completed, it will jump to 100%. So as we can see here, modify test case work state. Let's say it would not be complete. Then I do have my 100%.
All right. Hope that is answered. How many test cases are best practice to link to one requirement was another question.
Okay, very good question. In general, when starting creating test cases, I would always reflect on what requirement I want to toggle. In some cases, you might link from one test sheet to multiple templates, maybe that's the case. When you have test cases assigned in your test portfolio later on specified, you can link one test case to multiple requirements. It totally depends on the business and business information inside of the test case, where you can link it later on. But I've seen it very often that you link different test cases also to different requirements because you have set up a very specific workflow covering for this test case multiple requirements. It's also possible.
Is there a maximum number? How many test cases can be linked?
No.
Okay. Another question was how to import requirements from an Excel sheet to Tosca. Is there a possibility?
Yes, of course. You can import from Excel or also from Word via the clipboard function.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. At the beginning of the year, there was a MOOC session about it.
Right.
How to import from Microsoft Office stuff. And in general speaking, it's possible to have a structure to import into requirements, but it's also maybe to have a quick demonstration. You can also export test case designs to Excel and import it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to mention.
Okay. Cool. Another one was, does the risk calculation in the requirement section have impact on the generation of the instances within the test case design section?
Quick answer, no.
Yeah. Yeah. They're completely separated, so they have no influences one on each other. Right?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah. Does the risk calculation in the requirement section have impact on the generation of instances within test case design section?
Yeah. Again, no. Maybe the question it can also be asked the other way around. Does the test cases later on test case design have a specific contribution in requirements? So just to show it very quickly, to go the other way around.
Yeah.
When I have my when I have already test cases assigned to my requirement structure, and I have a specific weight for one requirement, then a specific weight is assigned for each test case, like the percentage of the risk assigned to the requirement divided through the amount of test cases.
Yeah.
So in our scenario, all test cases for the register process have the same risk contribution, have the same contribution to the risk. Maybe that was meant.
Okay. And the next one goes quite in the same direction. What does the column weight in test case design do, as we have this column in the requirement section as well?
Okay. I see. Yeah, then... okay. Let's switch to the test case design for the register process. You mean this column? Wait. Okay. As you can see here, when I expand my instance folder, I do see here a weight for each instance, so it's equal. I can assign a specific weight if it's possible to each instance.
All right.
It totally depends on the business, and it totally depends on the project and also the organization. Some organizations and they go very deep into this risk weighting stuff.
Yeah.
And they also assign a weight, let's say, to the straight through. Just any number. In our case, let's say straight through is 4 times more important than the others.
Yeah.
Then I can reflect with this weight also to the risk contribution.
Okay, so it's an additional risk weight options to go deeper and even weight instances in the test case design section.
Yes, but I would need to figure out how I can see the weight now in... okay, I'm not sure. We have assigned a weight for here, but it's not put into the contribution. Also, I have assigned it here. Okay, assigning the weight in the requirements for each instance is working. Unfortunately, it's not working when I have assigned it in the test case design. I'm not sure.
So they are not connected. That's what you're trying to say.
They should be connected, but I'm not sure what's the problem right now.
All right. Okay. Let's jump to the next question, I think.
Okay, yeah, I will figure out and...
Yeah. When to use exploratory testing or test case design? Is there a best practice? Was a question.
Whether to go with test case design or going with exploratory testing, from my perspective, totally depends on the test strategy.
Okay.
And maybe also depends on the resources a project has available. There's so many different approaches outside whether to go first with test case design, do kind of a test-driven approach, and then addressing all the test cases for the development department that they have a better focus. But totally can also be the other way around, like a very reactive test strategy and test case design, where you first have the development and then let's check what the testers might find. You can easily set up a test charter for maybe 1 or 2 hours for testing, assign a specific topic to the testers, and then totally go with the experience of the testers. It's a tricky question and not that easy to answer, but there's no such thing of what is best practice. It totally depends on the project and what test management is deciding to go for.
Okay, thank you very much. Another one was, is there a recommended empirical value how long test case design or requirement workshop would take? So I think it's for timing and...
Also a very good question. Usually I identify 3 different scenarios for this workshop stuff or for elaborating requirements, test case design. The first scenario would be the SMEs are handing over you just a document and you do all the requirements and test case design on your own. Second scenario would be to have workshops with related stakeholders and go for a 50-50, like they do the first session with a test case designer for about 2 hours maybe. They go with the first structure of requirements or test case design, and then the related SMEs, they get kind of a homework to think of different scenarios when you don't get into the deep during the workshop.
Okay.
And the third scenario would be do everything with a related SME together, and then it depends on the topic. It can be 1 hour, or it can be
10 hours.
1 day or 2 days until the test case design has done a work state where you say, okay, we can hand it over to the next person in the project, like the automation specialist, to automate stuff or whatever.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. That was it from the Q&A part. Unfortunately, and I say sorry, at this point, we cannot answer all of your questions. At least we had answered some of them. Thank you very much again for the questions from your side. Let me say just a few words before we close this session, because we are nearly running out of time. All of these sessions are recorded, so in a couple of days you can watch this session and other sessions from our website, on our website. Look on our website, and if you want to see a particular part again or repeat it, then watch it from our website. Next thing is something maybe some of you really have waited for, the voucher code. It will be this time our brand new test design specialist level 1 course. where you will get the voucher off. It will be sent out via email, I think 1 hour right after this session. So please don't create a ticket for it. You will get it as you participated and at these sessions, and can also start with the training immediately. That being said, for all those of you who doesn't have the requirements for the test design specialist, also AS1 and AS2 courses will be included. Our next MOOC, the upcoming MOOC on the 18th of October with another fantastic topic, will take place. Please join us again. It will be the ideal Tricentis Tosca test portfolio. As always, we will have 2 sessions for this topic, and it will be the presenter will be some consultant from Tricentis, as always, some expert. We love to hear from you, so please fill in the feedback as well. And if you need help, there are several addresses where you can write to. One hand, the support for technical questions and stuff. You can contact us, training department at academy@tricentis.com as well. You have the knowledge base, the fantastic manual, and as I said before, the MOOC recordings. This is it from our side. Thank you very much again for listening and watching our MOOC. Thank you, Søren, again for joining us.
Thanks.
And with that words, I close this session. Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye.